Craig, thank you very much. Now, yesterday, P&O Ferries gave immediate notice to 800 employees, saying the service will be unable to operate for a short period of time. Today, dismissed employees are threatening a series of demonstrations to take place over the coming days. Well, for more on this, we're joined now by Owen Corry, editor of Air and Travel magazine. And what can you tell us at this point, Owen, in terms of what we know?
Good afternoon, Sarah. Well, the protests are already taking place. But this has been coming for a while from P&O. They reflagged the ships out of Britain to Cyprus. And then when they announced their very sudden 800 employees dismissed with immediate effect, it did look like something that they had staged and planned for some time.
Have employees at this stage been given a reason as to why they were let go?
There's no official reason. There's very little being said by P&O, but it's very clear, Sarah, this is fire and rehire. It's endemic within shipping, and we've seen it, shipping line after ferry line after ferry line, getting rid of the old model of directly employing their staff and bringing in agency staff. Usually these are licensed out of Greece, and a lot of the ships are flagged out of Cyprus. Irish people will remember, listeners will remember Irish Ferries going through a process like this when their competitors did something similar. They did this back in 2005. Quite a lot of a kerfuffle at the time. They put 40,000 people turned out in a rally for the Irish Congress of Trade Unions organised, and they did come to a deal in December of 2005. But that was under the Irish process, which had National Implementation Board, LRC, all of those. The British process is probably less favourable to the unions because they have been emasculated back in the 1980s by legislation.
I know the Labour MP for Kingston upon Hull East has called on the British government, to force P&O to come up with a different plan, and he said to the BBC today, what I say to the government is that you've got to get P&O into a position where they're prepared to negotiate with the trade unions. They've got to come up with a different plan. They can't just summarily dismiss people without any consultation or notice because it's 800 jobs across the country. Do you think he's likely to get anywhere with that?
Unlikely to get anywhere unless, but they have a few cards up their sleeve. The P&O got money under the COVID scheme, the furlough scheme. They got about 30 million. So they will be put under pressure to repay that. There are ways of going around it, but there isn't, as I said, the same structures, the same HR machinery that, for instance, we have here that Bertie Ahern put in place. What they're dealing with, while we had the legacy of Bertie Ahern to get us through the Irish Ferry situation in 2005, and I remember Irish Ferries ended up bringing in agency staff. The British law is based on the legacy of Margaret Thatcher, which gives the unions much less to play with. There are protests, there's a lot of high profile, and it's a very big issue, Sarah, to sell to people. Staff being fired and rehired by agency, replaced by agency staff, that actually is a fairly strong staging post to get British public opinion back on the side of the trade unions, because it has been slipping away. Like the membership of trade unions in the private sector is down to 13% in Britain. It's about 25% in Ireland. So there are big the ideological issues here that apply not just to shipping but right across lots of industries.
Just finally then, Owen, obviously the main concern for the 800 people who've just lost their jobs, but just in terms of the service disruption that we're likely to see for Irish travellers, what routes do P&O ferries sail from Ireland, and what sort of disruption would you anticipate?
They're one of two major ferries on the northern routes. They've learned to Cairnryan. Obviously, Stranraer is gone for quite a few years ago, but they operate two ferry services with pretty large capacity. They deal with a lot of passengers on the Larne to Cairnryan. They do also do a couple of interesting things out of Dublin. They did the first Dublin to France direct service. That's operated now by Irish Ferries, but they've withdrawn really from the sea. It's been between Stena and Irish Ferries on the Dublin routes, but they do operate the very historic Dublin to Liverpool route 3 times a day. It isn't major for car traffic, Sarah. It's very big it's pretty important for freight. It only carries about 114 passengers, but it has about 2,000 lane metres for freight. And that Dublin-Liverpool would also have come under pressure since Brexit, as a lot of the traffic that went on the land bridge via Britain to the continent has been transferred direct to the continent. Dublin Port reported earlier this year that 64% of their traffic used to go to Britain before Brexit. Now it's down to 52%. I'm sure the loss of that traffic is also added to the P&O, but Dublin isn't one of their major routes.
Okay, well, thank you very much for all that information. That's Owen Corry, editor of Air and Travel magazine. Thank you very much for joining us this